Hey guys, what's up? So coming at you here today from 798, the art district of Beijing. Wow, what a crazy month, what a crazy couple of weeks it's been. When I posted my last update, the 20th of November, things were just about to change and I had no idea how much. Shortly after that update, the number of cases kept increasing. Beijing basically went into a lockdown. A lot of communities had a hard lockdown, which meant that people were not allowed to come and go. And the same thing was happening all around China that week. And then, of course, we had fire in Urumqi, where a lot of people died in a building that was locked down. Then we had the protests, I think that Friday that week, in Shanghai, the beginning of the A4 protests. Then we had a lot of people posting stuff on social media that weekend. I think it was a Saturday, where basically my moments, my social media flow on WeChat just blew up with random regular people I know very well, friends, colleagues, former colleagues, began posting videos, like protest videos from what happened in Xinjiang, from what was going on in Shanghai. They were posting these like video clips of this like French Revolution song, Michael Jackson's "They Don't Care About Us." It was just absolutely crazy. Like that one day, that one night, everything just blew up. That Saturday night, you had a protest in Beijing by the students at one of the main streets in Beijing. And the following day, that's when I realized that things were really taking a very strong turn for a thing I never thought I would see, which was that a lot of normal middle class people in Beijing living in these communities that were locked down, including my ex-wife, who was living in a very nice middle class community. They have like probably a few thousand people living there. They had a hard lockdown. They were not allowed to come and go from the community because they had found one case in one building, and they had locked down the whole community of all these people. And they put these like metal barriers by the streets. People there began to protest. They gathered in hundreds at the street level, and they began to demand that the community security guards open up the gate, because they said, according to these 20 new rules which had been issued by the government a few weeks earlier, the local security were not allowed to close down the whole community unless they had authority from the CDC, the Chinese Control of Disease Center, and they didn't have that. So initially, the local security refused, but then people began to actually kick down, I should say, the metal barriers of the entrance and the exit, and they forced their way out. And these people were not students; they were like middle-aged professionals. They were doctors. They were like academics. They were like IT engineers, and they were actually breaking down these barriers, protesting. And that's when I realized that things were about to change. They had to change, because there was simply no way that this could be allowed to continue. Either the government would have to go really hardcore and declare martial law, or they would have to open up. And then what happened is that they chose the latter route, and they actually opened up. And the reopening happened, I think within a week after that weekend. Suddenly it became possible again to travel between cities in China. They removed this green arrow health code to show where you had been in the past week. Everything began to open up. And then the week after that, a lot of people became infected, including myself. I was one of the first people who got infected in Beijing, based on what I heard. And Beijing basically died down again. It became very quiet because so many people were infected. you know, everything was open, but there was nowhere to go. And even like the delivery guys were infected, and I tried to order stuff online, and nobody could come to me, and because they were all sick basically at the same time. And that wave lasted for about 2 weeks. And here we are today. The first wave of COVID in Beijing has peaked. People have recovered largely, and the city is back to life. You know, I've been back to the office already this week. I'm gonna go again next week. Restaurants are full, the streets are full. Beijing was one of the first cities in China that had this massive outbreak. And then what I also heard from my colleagues and friends, then we had Tianjin, then we had Qingdao and Shanghai and also other places in South China. Right now Shanghai is basically going through their peak. And of course, as you might have seen on the news, it's very difficult to find different types of medicine like painkillers, fever reduction medicine and so on. So it does seem like the government has been quite poorly prepared for this. And of course, a lot of people are asking why. My theory is that for most of this year, the focus was on the party congress and to get the current leadership re-elected. And to do that, they had to keep zero COVID. They couldn't accept a big COVID outbreak in Beijing because that would definitely disrupt the Congress. On top of that, of course, it was a government signature policy that they had to enforce. And then I believed, and many believed, that after the party congress they would open up gradually and that they would be prepared for the opening. And I think that was the plan. Because shortly after the congress, you had these 20 new rules, which seemed to be like a relaxation, even though a moderate one, that allowed for a bit more targeted lockdowns. They reduced the number of days of quarantine for international arrivals. They tried to alleviate the situation because they saw that people were suffering, and they tried to do it gradually. They tried to control the curve. And probably they had plans to prepare enough medicine and everything during that period. But then what happened was that even with a small relief in the restrictions, COVID began spreading extremely quick because it is Omicron, it's very contagious. And then all these local governments who were supposed to follow these 20 rules from the government, they panicked and they went all in again because nobody wanted to be the one with the most COVID cases. And we saw a very uneven implementation in different cities. So for example, in Shijiazhuang, which is a city a few hours from Beijing, the local government decided to completely open up. Immediately when they had these 20 new rules, they stopped the COVID testing, they stopped the COVID health code requirements. As a consequence, Shijiazhuang very quickly became overrun with COVID as the only city in China. So people from there were no longer welcome to go to other cities. People there became very worried, very concerned about this. And people there were basically against this relaxation of security protocols. Meanwhile, in other places in China, the government was very strict, even stricter than they had to be. So instead of following these 20 new measurements of locking down one building in a community that had infections, they locked down the whole community, maybe even the whole area. It was still impossible to travel between different cities. And then the government saw this, and they probably were thinking to open up quicker. But at the same time, they probably had some plan about doing it over a few months or something, probably after Spring Festival. But then you had this week with these protests. And at that point, I think they basically gave up. They thought, okay, we cannot control this anymore. We cannot open up gradually. We have to go open up all in and just rip off the bandage, basically. And that's what they did. And that's why nothing has really been prepared. People now are basically on their own to deal with this situation. And of course, the narrative is that this is Omicron, it's not so dangerous as the previous Delta versions and so on. But people are still getting sick, especially old people are very vulnerable to this, as you all know. And it's quite tough for anybody who is very sick right now, because there's no medicine and no place in the hospitals for them. But yeah, I mean, it's been an absolutely crazy month. A lot of things that were changed. For me, I'm very happy now that China's opening up again. I'm happy that I recovered from COVID. People I know have all recovered. Nobody has really fallen very sick or died. But I do know people around me who have family members who have passed away. And typically speaking, they've been a bit older, in their 80s or 90s, and they have been sick already. But wow, what a change. And again, I think the real reason that this change happened so quickly, it was not because of the student protests in Shanghai and Beijing and different campuses around China, as some people will say. I believe it was mainly the middle class, like here in Beijing in my ex-wife's community. Because when they protest, when they are in the barricades, then that's a whole different story than if you only have some students in the middle of a highway. So yeah, those are my thoughts. If you're in China, hope you stay safe, hope you can recover quickly if you haven't already. And next step, I hope China opens up for international travel again. That would be fantastic. I haven't been back home now for almost 3 years. So yeah, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you guys. See you next time.